said that?
You know, you're really late with this video, right?
I know, I've had a few setbacks, but what matters is I'm here to do it now. What are you laughing at?
You said do it.
How are you even talking to... Never mind. Let's just get this retrospective back on track. Okay, so it was technically released in 2001, but it did get an arcade release in Japan in December of 2000. And the main reason I know that is because of this issue of Arcadia magazine, which includes detailed move lists and combos. But first, let's talk about where Hudson was as a company during Bloody Roar 3's release. It was around this time that Hudson Soft entered Japan's stock market, and when the PAL version of Bloody Roar 3 was released, Konami stepped in and bought over 5 million shares of the company, becoming its largest shareholder and setting the stage for future projects that would be published and or developed by either side. Speaking of which, the publishers also changed, as Sony Computer Entertainment of America, who published the first two titles in the US, was replaced with... Was that a little too dramatic? This was also a time where it seemed like Hudson was really starting to get behind the Bloody Roar series. At least overseas. I say this because of one word. Swag. Swag! 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 Keep in mind, I can't prove when exactly all of this was made, nor can I prove how much of it was actually greenlighted by Hudson. Now, it's not unusual to use merchandising to promote a video game. The most common kinds of promotion being things like hats and t-shirts. And Bloody Roar 3 had the V-Jump book, which wasn't uncommon, as the other two games also had V-Jump books. But then they made some rather unusual merchandising choices. Things like Bloody Roar 3's cigarette cases, Bloody Roar 3 bumper stickers, Bloody Roar 3 tiny-ass stickers you can't see from more than a few feet away, Bloody Roar 3 phone cards, and the strangest merchandise of all, the Chia Gato head. Chia. It's one thing to be creative with your merchandising, but there's a reason things like hats and t-shirts are used most often. Where do you usually keep things like cigarette cases and phone cards? In your pocket. Kinda hard to see the promotional material now, isn't it? Speaking of hard to see, let's take a look at some of the games that came out around the same time as Bloody Roar 3. Max Payne, Gran Turismo 3, Twisted Metal Black, Red Faction. While these are more widely known titles, at least they managed not to release it at the same time as games like Final Fantasy X or Metal Gear Solid 2, which would come out months later. It also helps that by this point, Bloody Roar's fanbase was as visible as it had ever been. The series even got mentioned in the 2000 single My Console by Eiffel 65. You know, the guys that made the blues song, you know, I'm blue, da-ba-dee-da-ba-da-ya, da-ba... Whatever, just listen to the clip.
Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, Gran Turismo, Omega Boost, Bloody Roar, X-Files, all over the world, come on!
Expectations were running higher than ever at this point, and culminated with the 2001 release of Bloody Roar 3, a game which, like its predecessors, did well enough to get re-released in Japan as part of the Best series, officially dubbing the game a good choice. Is it me, or do those titles seem to conflict a little bit?
Excuse me, kind sir, is that Bloody Roar 3?
Yes, and it's the best!
Really?
Well, it's a good choice. Anyway, let's see what kind of improvements they made. Story mode was removed.
way!
Yeah.
Actually, I shouldn't say removed. That would be the blood which was removed, which I don't get for two reasons. One, both of the previous Bloody Roar games were still rated teen despite the blood, and two, isn't a Bloody Roar game without blood kind of like an Art of Fighting game where the characters just yell mean things at each other? No, story mode seemed more like it was forgotten. Instead, the much shorter, oversimplified stories of each character are thrown in at the beginning and end of arcade mode like several other fighters did at the time and still do now. This is a major disappointment as, aside from the obvious lack of content that comes from removing one of the primary modes of play, story mode was a more consistent and in-depth way to see the characters interact beyond when they were beating the shit out of each other. Hell, some characters in 3 don't interact with anyone. Unless you count the nameless background drums, most of which don't have a single line of dialogue or do much of anything. That's not to say there isn't a story though, it's just sort of there. Various zoanthropes around the world have strange marks appear on their bodies, which they call crests, or signs of the beast. Zoanthropes with these crests become more powerful, but also seem to die after getting it.
And no, not everyone in the game has a crest. Or if they do, they don't say so. And no, they don't explain why everyone has a crest appear when they transform into beast mode, despite some of them supposedly not having it. And no, there's no noticeable difference in strength between the people that have crests and those that don't. And this is why you should think twice before tossing supernatural bullshit into your plot! G.I. Joe!
It's specifically noted that the zoanthropes that fought against, quote, the various organizations, Xylon, Zeon, that schemed to abuse the power of zoanthropes, otherwise known as almost the entire cast, have the mark on them as well, and are going to stand and fight, quote, although they didn't know their enemy. So they're acting like a bunch of blind guys trying to play football?
Whoa! Nice hustle, guys. Now, give me some wind sprints.
You got it, coach! Hoorah!
I know that joke was forced, but how bad does this make the good guys look? They sound like a bunch of Jack Bowers running around aimlessly, beating up everyone they see and going, Joey was killing the crust people!
And apparently not even got— oh, come on. Do we really need to make even a passing religious reference?
That's still no worse than the weird shift to the whole crest thing. I don't even know where these things supposedly show up, because you never see it on the zoanthropes that supposedly have it. Except for Bruce's—
I feel like something's cracked in my brain. You seem so nonchalant about all this.
Ho-hum.
Why was I programmed to feel pain?
The story from the old Bloody Roar website, however, which has since ceased to exist and I'm now blatantly stealing Zero Master's video for reference,
You're welcome.
says that after the events of Bloody Roar 2, a group called the WOC, which I eventually found out was the non-government organization, the World of Coexistence, are attempting to aid human zoanthrope relations when the marks show up. It's small, but at least there's some tie-in to the main plotline. But here it also says the mark only appears when they're in beast form, which doesn't make a lot of sense because clearly Lusuzi— No! We are not showing that again.
Let's slow down for a second, because I know people are going to get all pissed off for no good reason if I don't clarify this now. I like this game. I really like this game. Hell, I wouldn't be wearing this shirt I made specifically for the video if I didn't like this game. I just barely like Bloody Roar 2 more than this. And I think that if you're a true fan of something, you can admit where its flaws are. Or at least what you think its flaws are. Like how the US instruction book looks like this, while the Japanese instruction book looks like this. Yeah, thanks for the cutback, guys. Or how about the cover art?
The art for the Japanese and PAL versions of the game is alright. It's a close-up of longtime Bloody Roar poster child Yugo mid-transformation. It's simple and gets the point across. Even if it does kind of look more like—
You can't see me, my time is now.
Compare this to the version the Americas got, which,
You know, it's bad enough that Jenny's beast form isn't really a beast form, or that she's basically a female clone of another character, but...
I'm your clone. Who are you? My clone.
Stop!
Who am I?
Stop it! I need that joke for later. Now I could let this go if Jenny A. weren't a minor character, which she is, B. had some significant role in the plot of the game, which she doesn't, or C. wasn't trying to share the cover with 3 other people and their beast forms, creating a clusterfuck the likes of which was reserved for Japanese cover art and crossover titles. Hell, I'm complaining about this even though my favorite character Sheena is on the cover and only appears to be wearing a...
Now you're a man! A man, man! Now you're a man! A man!
And you people wonder why this video took so long to come out.
There's also this guy on the cover, a new character named Zeon. And because I know someone out there is thinking it, Bloody Roar 3 came out before Devil May Cry, so it's not Zeon sort of looking like Dante, it's Dante sort of looking like Zeon. He is the continuation of a pattern that started from Bloody Roar 2, and continues until the end of the series, in which the plot almost entirely centers around the new characters. Not an uncommon thing for a series to do, but it does get tiresome. He's out to kill any zoanthropes he finds with the crest on them because the power they gain comes from a relic called the Tabula. He even goes so far as to kill his sister at the beginning of the game, something I might care about if I knew she existed beforehand. His idea is that if every other zoanthrope with the mark is killed, all the power from the Tabula will go to him, power which he would use to create
a whole new world,
in which the shapeless beings gain form.
Which is kind of odd, since his beast form is the Unborn, something which isn't a beast at all, and shouldn't have a definite form by its very definition. But in fact, it looks like... Oh, so that's where the new look for Megatron came from.
His fighting style is a combination of speed, unusual technique, and newbie-friendly controls, as he has several combos ranging anywhere from 3 to 5 hits, many of which end in guard break attacks, by just holding a direction and mashing an attack button. Not bad for a guy whose punching attacks almost never involve him making a fist. As for what the other 11 individual characters, not counting the 2 unlockables, are doing in this game, here's a quick rundown. Yugo, whose last name is now Okami instead of Ogami, has the crest, is the leader of the WOC, and sets out to find the truth behind it before it kills him and everyone he cares about.
A lot of the stories are really cut and dry like Yugo's, so let's just try going through all of them as fast as we can.
Alice has the crest and is helping Yugo, Kenji does, I think, and becomes Bakuru again to help Yugo. Jenny has the crest and wants the tabulous power for herself, and to be fair, Jenny is starting to play differently from Fox by now. It's mostly just a couple of special moves and a different fighting stance, but hey, baby steps. Long stopped wandering to stay with her family, but the daughter Lanfa gets the crest and falls ill, and since she reminds him of his dead sister, he sets out to save her. Shenlong has the crest, just wants to fight people and party, and is too sexy for his shirt. Busuzima has the crest on his ass, and searches for the tabula to become even more powerful. Uriko doesn't have it and is just fighting people because she's bored and heard Yugo and Alice were doing something.
No, really, that's what her story is. And if you think that's dumb, cover your ears until I come back on screen.
You win!
Don't tell my mommy, okay?
Does Uriko have some kind of mental handicap, or is she aging in reverse?
Can it be both? Huh? Huh?
Stone has the crest and it's causing his body to deteriorate and his mind to have roughly the same consistency of a slushie. Sheena has the crest and is sent to investigate the tabula with the No Shirts Brigade, and Gato has the crest and is a United Nations commissioner who doesn't know what he's doing.
But wait, there's more! There's 2 new unlockable characters in Bloody Roar 3. And I mean new in the sense that if someone gives you a book that you read the plot summary on 2 years ago and you forgot parts of it, then technically it's new to you.
The first is Koryu, a character who should seem really, really familiar. Just look at the costume, the fighting style, hell, even the name. And if you still can't get it, how about a side-by-side comparison of these 2 pictures? That's right, Koryu is actually the first Bakuryu. After the events of the first game where Bakuryu's body became so unstable it essentially dissolved, an arms manufacturing company, which was formerly a division of Tylon, collected the liquefied tissue and used it, along with the previously collected battle data of Bakuryu, to create the cyborg ninja Koryu. Because of this, his fighting style is not just the same as the first game, but also the same as the new Bakuryu, Kenji.
which means I am fully justified in using this clip.
I'm your clone. Who are you? My clone. And who am I? You're not you. Who are you if I'm not me? I'm you, but I'm not me.
And neither he nor the other hidden character have an intro or outro. The only reason I know his background is because it was outlined in a later game in the series. To unlock him, you have to go through the first 4 stages of arcade mode without losing a single round. Then he'll appear in stage 5. Beat him there and he's unlocked. Though to select him, you need to go to the bottom row of characters and move all the way to the side until the cursor disappears. Because it's not like there was room for him anywhere else, right? Maybe move the names up and have him to the side, whatever. And then there's Uranus, who becomes the official, overpowered character who is outlawed from use in any tournaments character of the series. I know overpowered is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but I don't know how else to describe a character that's faster than everyone else, has decent strength, can easily combo a person to death just by mashing punch and or kick repeatedly, and won all 40 comm battles I put them in. Some of the only things working against Uranus are that her human form takes damage pretty easily, though actually hitting her is another matter, and her beast form can only use beast button attacks and throws. Hitting punch or kick reverts her to human form. Now some of you may think that Uranus's moves look kind of familiar, and for that matter, her beast form also looks pretty familiar. Yep, Uranus is basically Uriko from the first Bloody Roar game. In fact, her backstory from later games shows that Uranus was created by Tylon through quote-unquote converting Uriko.
You know what that means!
I'm your clone. Who are you?
Don't tell my mommy, okay?
Oh, and when the game was localized in the West, they never redubbed her character, so all of what little dialogue Uranus has is in Japanese.
You win!
2 new characters, and neither of them are actually new. How's that for consistency?
Yeah, speaking of consistency, when do I come back into the video?
Get back in the kitchen!
And while I'm near the topic, I should mention that for this video I played both the US and the Japanese version, in large part because of the controversy that surrounded the latter. No, it didn't have anything to do with character portrayal, censorship, or somewhat ridiculous jiggle physics.
Just bounce it with me, just bounce with me, just bounce it with me, come on.
No, this has to do with something that was in the Japanese version and then got cut from the European and American releases. Hell, it was even cut from the Japanese re-release. Something called... Debug Mode.
If you try searching for Debug Mode Bloody Roar 3, you might find some extremely old posts on various forums of people trying to access this, or posting now broken links to images of what people with Japanese copies created using it. Basically, Debug Mode is a way to play around with the in-game character models, and sometimes level scenery and colors, creating various kinds of poses and expressions with them using an incredibly complex XYZ coordinate and scaling system. It's accessed in Japanese black box copies of Bloody Roar 3 by highlighting Option and hitting L2 in circle. Think of it as a primitive version of Gmod, which the developers allegedly forgot to remove from the final product. Because of the more advanced character modeling present on the PS2, it was possible not just to move and rescale the torso and limbs of the characters, but the individual joints on each finger, the hair, and even certain parts of the face. The problem with this is, humanity is full of people with sick, perverted ideas who can and will act upon them if given the appropriate medium to do so. Japan, you are definitely not the exception to this rule. Several images of Debug Mode posted online were taken down for being, well, I guess there's no other way to say it, vaguely pornographic in nature. In fact, this is the only one I was able to find online. Almost all the others that were posted redirect to terms of service violation notices.
Long story short, humanity sucks.
Yeah. And exactly how much time did you spend doing horrible things in debug mode?
2 months, 5 days, 10 hours, 46 minutes, and 19 seconds. Now let's get back in touch with our old friend, Kajiwara-san!
Yes, much like Caramel Mama coming back to do the art for Bloody Roar 3, Jun Kajiwara also came back to contribute to the soundtrack, as well as everyone else from Bloody Roar 2 except for a new drummer, Atsuo Okamoto. who also contributed to the soundtrack for Final Fantasy IX. For Bloody Roar 3, all the songs were based around the stages the fights took place in, instead of the opposing fighter like in the previous two games. I could argue this is yet another way the game makes the characters matter less, but instead I'll say that if you're one of the people that thought Bloody Roar 2's music was alright, but got tired of hearing the instrumental rock over and over, this soundtrack might be for you. This time there's a little more variety with the style of music. Yes, there's still a lot of instrumental rock, but there's also tracks with elements of techno and ambience to them, such as with the Freezing Space or the Dino Museum.
Get ready, fight!
The overall result, in my opinion at least, is the strongest soundtrack in the series, which for anyone interested, did receive a commercial release and can still be found with relative ease from importers and Japanese bidding sites. I can't really say the same about the voice work, which, for Bloody Roar, has always been kind of meh. Although I can say that this time around, Vaughn does seem really enthusiastic about every punch and kick he throws.
Alright, I can't resist doing this.
Are you going to discuss the fighting part of the fighting game anytime soon?
Yes, actually, people have been asking me to do that more with these videos. I just like leading them on like I'm not going to mention it at all.
Oh, so you can explain the fighting in War Gods, but you can't explain it in Bloody Roar, the one where it's important.
It's on! Oh, it is on! So you're saying I should just do this for the rest of the video?
At first, when it's completely empty, blue energy will slowly fill into the beast gauge on its own. The gauge can fill up even faster by executing attacks, striking the opposition, taking damage from the opposition.
You're kind of an ass, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Something I should note in general about Bloody Roar 3 is that it just feels faster than the previous Bloody Roar titles. It was really noticeable when I'd been playing 3 for a while, and then tried going back to 1. That aside, Bloody Roar 3 brought a few significant changes in gameplay for the series, one being air combos. It's not that these weren't possible in the series before this point, but they feel much easier to pull off in this game. Because that's fun, right? Having your opponent juggle you in the air while draining more than half your life bar and all you can do about it is wait for them to finish, that's fun, right? The second is Hyper Beast Mode, which used to be Rave Mode in Bloody Roar 1, and which I may have forgotten to say wasn't in Bloody Roar 2.
Oops.
The difference this time is that Hyper Beast Mode allows a player to pull off as many beast drives as they want while the mode is active, without reverting to human form. Although when Hyper Beast Mode runs out, you can't use your beast form at all for the rest of the fight. Whereas in Bloody Roar 1, the length of time for Rave Mode was determined by how much of the beast bar was left, here Hyper Beast Mode requires a full beast bar and thus always is active
For 12 seconds.
which is just long enough to be able to pull off 2 successful beast drives. Speaking of beast drives, they added a mechanic where if you try to trigger a beast drive, it refills the blue bar representing a portion of lost health. I'm not so sure about this, because it's making the beast drive, the super powerful attack, into more of a defensive maneuver where sometimes you won't even care if it lands or not, because you just want the health back. And yes, you could argue that you would get the health back anyway by just staying in beast form, but that was part of the risk versus reward element of it, and that's kind of weakened now. The other was the tweaking of the guard escape ability. Instead of sidestepping the opponent, performing a guard escape merely lets a fighter evade one attack. To evade combos, a player needs to perform the guard escape for every punch or kick or even some beast drives thrown their way, and doing so results in some rather ridiculous and spastic animations, particularly when done by a computer-controlled opponent, especially when they're 12 feet away from you and thus in no danger of being hit, and yet they still do it anyway. Why does that happen? Whether this improves or detracts from the experience may depend on your previous experience, not just with the series, but fighting games in general. If you're a fan of the Street Fighter series, particularly 3, or any games which use parries to deflect successful individual attacks, this might seem very familiar and be preferred over what guard escape used to be. If you're into other games which used either single-shot parries, escapes, or riposte that throw back an opponent, or use a sidestep as a means of avoiding and even getting behind or alongside a character like the older Bloody Roar games, the Soul Calibur series, or the Rival Schools games, you might prefer the old guard escape to what's in Bloody Roar 3. This might have been seen as unnecessary as Bloody Roar 3's Western release did have sidestepping on by default. Sidestepping with the L2 and R2 buttons has always been an option in the Bloody Roar games, but this was the first time it was turned on from the start. This can be exploited very easily against opponents executing lengthy combos, or charging opponents, the latter of which can make overcoming the steeper difficulty of later fights much easier. Step 1. Back up. Step 2. Wait. Step 3. Sidestep. Step 4. Do something. Step 5. Repeat as necessary. There are a few significant drawbacks to sidestepping. One is that while sidestepping, your guard is down. Another is that horizontal attacks such as leg sweeps or roundhouse kicks can still hit you if you're beside the other fighter. Computer opponents apparently don't realize sidestepping exists, as they never, and I do mean never, do it. And the last one is that having two people in versus matches trying to sidestep each other is at least 5 different kinds of goofy.
Awkward, retarded, confusing, hilarious, and Jamaican. But what about those amazing endings?
Yugo punches the tabula into pieces, yes really, and that makes the crest disappear somehow. Alice stops Zeon with the power of love, Bakaru kills Zeon and gives the tabula to Gato, Jenny holds Zeon captive and sells the tabula to a private agency after draining its power into Zeon and has a really small mouth. Long finds out that Zeon is actually possessed by the malicious spirit of his older sister and then imprisons the spirit inside of himself, which somehow makes the crest disappear, allowing the daughter Lanfra to recover and her father to appear on Iron Chef. Shenlong forces Busuzima to translate the marks on the tabula, which he can't do, as well as forcing him to be an errand boy while lounging on a beach somewhere, while in Busuzima's ending he gets the tabula before being arrested by a multinational operation and thrown in jail. Oh, for the love of God, why? Uriko breaks the tabula by accident and then goes on to get grounded by Mitsuko, and I swear to God she has the brain of a 5-year-old. Stun gets possessed by the tabula and the world goes to hell, something which should be more sad considering how much the character has suffered to this point, but hey, it's arcade mode and we have to cram this shit into 3 screen caps in 90 seconds! Sheena gets overruled by an abrupt change of command upon trying to enter the temple, you know, the temple she just fought Zeon in, finds out her superiors are trying to get the tabula to abuse its power, which leads to her telling off the commander, walking away from the mission and disappearing from the face of the earth, and Gato resists the lure of the tabula's power as he says it needs to be contained until they can properly understand and control it before he turns it over to the United Nations astronauts? Oh, and there's some cliffhanger about the possibility of there being other tabulas out there that could do more damage if unleashed on the world.
And where does this plot point go? Bonesaw?
Nowhere!
Bloody Roar 3 served as not just a solid transition to the next generation of game consoles, but a solid introduction to the series, despite some shortcomings. Many of the people I know who got into Bloody Roar first became fans as a result of this game, and it's pretty easy to see why, as the roster, with the exception of the hidden characters, is fairly balanced, the combat is still fun and fast-paced, and the presentation complements everything rather well. I can totally understand why many people call it the best in the series, though as I've said before I prefer the presentation and content of 2 more.
Regardless of which game was better, this was by far the high point in terms of popularity and exposure for the series. And it would take a series of awful decisions to ruin the momentum Bloody Roar had built.
Oh, you mean like abruptly switching to the GameCube when the last 3 games were PlayStation exclusives?
Yeah.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
That's how you're leading into the next video? Seriously? Really? Really? Really?
Yeah, but actually the next retrospective video isn't going to be on Primal Fury.
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next?
Well, before that,
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next?
Well, before I did that,
I have came back from a 1-year hiatus of not making a single YouTube video to address this concern. What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next?
There's something else that...
So what do you mean Primal Fury isn't next?
This thing came before...
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next?
I was hoping to cover...
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next? Don't worry, it's okay. It's okay.
And it's relevant to... I just wanted...
The fuck you mean Primal Fury isn't next?
What the fuck are you people doing in my video? Why are you on the toilet?
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next? Shakes fist angrily.
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next?
I can't do this without a straight face. Shut up, Skype, I'm filming.
I actually have Primal Fury now. I wonder when I'm gonna play it. Yeah. Video games. Yeah.
Now, if you excuse me, I had to play this.
Fuck, connect!
Wait, it took me 6 hours to get that message?
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next? Oh, don't worry. Shh. Don't worry, you'll do it. Someday. Right? Someday, you'll do it. You'll do it. You'll do it now. You do it all day, every day. You do it now, right now, before this bitch comes and sacks you in the ass. Maybe one day I can find you a bloody war pillow or something. And no, that's terrible.
What do you mean Primal Fury isn't next? It's the one that comes after 3, and it's the only physical Bloody War game I actually own, and... whatever. This is SCR we're talking about. It's just that unpredictable. Why else would I own 6 NHL games?
You want Primal Fury? Here, you can have it. I got no game in it. No game. It's sitting somewhere in my room. I don't care. Here.
Let Loose the Dogs of War would have taken on a new meaning if one of the characters in Bloody Roar 3 could assume a canine form.
The main character's a wolf!